Hello, this is Stefano with Stefano's Espresso Care. We just received an exceptionally good shape older Pavoni in for tune-up, repair, diagnostic, etc. And I thought I'll take a video. When somebody buys a used machine, what do we check? Well, let's start with the basic here. I'll make sure that the steam valve knob is operating or turning. I look inside the boiler, and by the way, this is one other sign of an old machine, I would assume. Late 80s, early 90s, we'll look at it a little later. Brass knob. I look inside the boiler. If I need to, I will use an endoscope when we have to take pictures to then eventually send to the customer. But I'll make sure that the heating element doesn't have any crack visibly, anything that will attract my attention before eventually filling it up with water and plugging it in. The next thing we do, and again, this is before plugging it in, is to remove the ABS base and look for any damages with the wires or any related electric damage. Yeah, as I was expecting, this is a machine that is a 1983. It looks like was never used or barely used. Here is one consideration, and that could be the reason why the customer say the machine never worked or worked and then it got stored away. This red sleeve, orange sleeve, will actually hold a thermal fuse, thermal cutoff, and it will actually just work until basically it gets cut off, as in exposed to heating element, exposed to water, low water, or some other high amperage sudden, which normally is related to the coil being exposed to water. So what we want to do is to check continuity. Here, to make it simple, we just go on the beeping, and you will see if you have continuity between that part. That seems to be okay. Must as well, because this is a two-stage heating element, so 4 different prongs, 2 different coils. You can test for continuity, and eventually, once the wire are actually entirely disconnected, it will be more logical, but you get a knob reading, which 15.8, we are in the parameter, and this one 55 and change, we are also in the parameter. So the heating elements appear to be okay. You can also, sorry, little problem stabilizing this machine. Doesn't want to be stable. One other test you want to do is dispersion to ground. 42, that's a little high. So that could be the issue right there. We'll figure that out once it gets plugged in to a GFCI or to my testing plug. So once the bottom is inspected, there is no issue with any of the electrical part. The switch are operating properly. There is an issue with the power cord on this side, just pulling out from the grommet. That's not a big consideration right now, but at this point in time, and only at this point in time, you can fill it up with water and do further testing. Stand by. I just plugged in the machine. I'm reading an amperage drawn from my device here, and it is on the 7.5. The heating element is on the higher position. I'll go to the lower position, it goes down to 2.2. I'm okay with it. I fill up the boiler pretty much to the top of the metal side glass edge. And now we are just waiting for the machine to build up pressure. If the boiler is slightly overfilled, you will have water that eventually will start to drip out from the safety valve protection discharge. So we'll wait for now for the machine to build. It is back on 2 on the switch, and I'm getting 7.5 amp reading. At this point in time, also make sure that, of course, the steam knob is shut. Pump the lever a few times, which in many instances you don't get any water coming out until the machine is under pressure. And we just wait for the heating elements to bring the temperature up to where it should. Stand by. As the machine starts to build up pressure, and in most occasions you can actually hear it, you open up slightly the steam valve to release some negative air, which sometimes it will show a sudden drop in pressure. Sometimes it just keeps building up, starts to build up. We are waiting for pressure to build up. To mention that I forgot to say earlier, I like to check also that the side glass nuts and the closing screw are actually tight, making sure that they weren't loose through aging, I guess. And again, this is only an initial testing that I'm doing. I don't know if you can see, but there is water that starts to drip out from the discharge. And I can start to hear some steam hissing out. So, assuming that we don't see and we don't hear any steam valve leak, the steam is dissipating out from the safety valve, which is the place that should be dissipating. Sometimes they're stuck, so you can do a little tapping, but I can clearly see steam coming out and I can clearly hear it. So this is the way that the machine is intended to operate when you have a 4-pronged heating element. And the only protection, this is the steam, of course, coming out, and it's becoming greater and greater. At this point in time, you switch to position 1. And as we already determined earlier, both of the heating elements are in operating condition. The initial steam on position 2 should start to come out about 0.7 or so, if you will have a gauge connected, of course, either on the knob or on the side glass. At this point in time, you can proceed in testing the machine. Insert the portafilter, which, again, look how clean this it was for a 1983. This machine was barely used. And this is pretty much what I'll be doing when testing and receiving a machine before taking it apart and rebuild it or do whatever is necessary that needs to be done to bring it back to fully enjoyment and operable condition. Thank you for watching.